Hey everyone, welcome to the Stack Overflow podcast. Today we have another episode of Leaders of Code, where we chat with tech leaders about the work they're doing, their challenges, their teams, their customers, their use of AI, and so much more. My name is Ira May. I am the B2B editor here at Stack Overflow, and I am joined today by Ben Matthews, who is our Senior Director of Engineering. Ben, I think you've been on this show before. Welcome back.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
And our guest today is Loïc Houssier. He is the head of engineering at Superhuman, which is an AI native email app. Welcome to the show, Loïc.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Amazing. So I wanted to just kind of start off by asking you both a little bit about how you kind of got into the world of software and technology.
Sure. My name is Ben Matthews. I'm a senior director of engineering here at Stack Overflow. And my journey through technology has been, through ups and downs. I've always had a fascination with it of just building things, whether it came from Legos to constructs. And then when I found code, that was also a cool thing, but something I always sort of saw as a hobby, as opposed to kind of what I wanted to do every day. I always had this impression of coders go off into a corner and program. And then at the end of the day, they let you out and then you can be around people again. And, I always enjoyed working with people and just building things. But when I actually got in the industry and I saw everything that I could do and what you could be, this is where I found a passion of working with people, helping them build things, and very happy and very lucky I've got to lean into that for my career.
That's pretty cool, Ben. On my side, I started, it was a long time ago. I have some gray hair. I would say talk about it. My first interaction with code was, I was in middle school and I got this Amstrad CPC 6128. So for the old people that are listening to this podcast, I would say fond memories. And you were basically ordering some newspaper, and at the end of which you had some tutorials that you can replicate on your on this machine to do some pretty cool stuff. And that was my first interaction. But then in college, I fell in love with math. So I was not a CS graduate. I basically did math until my master. And in the master, basically, I tried to do some applied math to security. So a bunch of cryptography with this cool algorithm, which indeed you have both math and the theory, but you need to make it work and prove in the real world this is working. So that was my first step with C and pointers and algorithm and optimization and memory management and all of that. So this is how I started, and I'm trying to as you said, you had your up and downs, Ben. I had my up and downs, and I had my left and right as well. I spent, of course, most of my career in the tech industry, but I was lucky to spend 2 years outside of the software industry as well. So kind of my left and right, which in terms of leadership, that was something. I learned a lot about it, and maybe we will be able to talk about it.
And I always love hearing people's backgrounds of what is that journey of how you got into tech? Because it sounds like so many people have different journeys, and especially people that have changed industries and changed professions and moved into tech. They have a lot of valuable context. What is your thoughts on how you get those people to see things the same with all of those different backgrounds? What are some of your ways you get your engineers to align around a message of what success is?
I come with a math background, and kind of the purpose of math is to detect patterns in life and try to modelize or provide models that can be a good approximation of the reality that you see on the ground. I feel that being in tech leadership is all about the same. It's helping people to kind of take a step back and the situation you're facing today might not be that different than the situation you had a couple of years ago, and helping people to make those connections, helping people understand that, there's maybe something there. There's maybe a pattern. There's maybe something that I do, maybe not in an optimized way, but if I take that step back, I can learn from it, and I can learn from others with their different experience. Holy cow, what we're facing today. Sure, I was in the B2C world or in the B2E world, and maybe working for core tech, but if you take a step back, most of our problems are very similar. So yeah, to your question, I think this is a good portion of my job is to help people be unstuck from or being too grounded and too close to the reality of their problem, and take that step back. Something that I'm trying to do more and more with my people.
Now, and I love that point of view of people with all those different backgrounds can have, like, you can learn from each other to enhance your point of view. It's not even trying to get them all aligned to one as much as blending like all of these different approaches and having them learn from each other to build like new points of view. Like, I'd love to hear more about that, of like what the chances that you do have to face chances for people to talk about those problems, try to be innovative around those problems. How do you lean into that with those opportunities you have?
So for one, you need to create those opportunities, and it's not always easy. Like we are all moving fast. We have like pressure from the market, from the competition, from the business. Like we need to move fast, and when you need to move fast, your main focus is execution, and it's hard to create those opportunities. And at Superhuman, we're a fully remote company, so everyone is both remote and distributed. So we have people from San Francisco, where I am, to Patagonia in Argentina, up to Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, and even like one person in London right now. So like the range in terms of time zone is pretty wide. And if you only focus on execution, you kind of like miss that personal touch, you miss those like close relationships. So we try to have those offsites regularly to build bounds. So you need to create the space. You need to be like really deliberate and intentional and understand that, especially also we'll be started talking about like execution and startups and all. When you're not in the same space, information flows in a different way. Trust is built at a different pace. So you need a bit more like intentionality. So you need to be intentional. And that offsite was like a great example. I would say this people manager offsite where we aligned on the strategy of the company. We aligned on the values and how we should work. Because at the end of the day, when you get that alignment, you can create and rely on their autonomy, because everyone understands the goals of the company, the way we work. Who are we as leaders, and how can we project that to the rest of the organization? When you get that alignment, it's easier to get that autonomy. So we call that, I mean, it's nothing new, but like the concept of aligned autonomy. So using those offsites to build the bounds and create that alignment, increase the velocity of the organization.
I'm totally with you on those people meeting together. I think of our own offsites at Stack that we've done. The amount of, just because of a changed, let's say, landscape or different venue of ways to connect, so many innovative ideas have come out. I can think of like 3 or 4 off the top of my head in our last offsite of things like, that's a great idea. And it's not even just so much that we were meeting face to face, which was value, because, like we even got stuck in office sometimes. It was just changing the venue, changing the paradigm of how we interact. And so I would actually love to hear, like, I think as you said, what autonomy? The
aligned autonomy.
Aligned autonomy. Yeah. Being able to answer that question. Like, could you give an example or two of like the time that's really helped across your organization, of now that those people leaders have that aligned autonomy, it's helped your teams go faster?
I would have a good example, and like maybe switching to, I would say, the world of AI. Mm-hmm. I would say when I started at Superhuman, it was like we were starting like to talk about like the ChatGPT, Cloud Code, and all of that, like all those tools coming together. But Superhuman has a team that is made of a bunch of old timers. So you build some habits, you build some assumptions, budget, ability to bring new tools, whatever that is. And one thing that we've done here at Superhuman is like, okay, this is a new world. We don't know the best practices yet. We don't know which are the tools that we'll be using. We know it will be disruptive to some extent. What can we do with that? And part of this aligned autonomy was like, okay, what is the alignment part? What would be helpful for an IC, an engineer out of Brazil? What would be useful coming from the top to some extent, and the leadership to bring that clarity that will help that person move faster with those tools? And there was like, it was coming back to 2 things. One is like removing the red tape, like making really, I would say, clear assumptions in terms of like, hey, you know what? You can try out anything you want. So that was the first thing. Don't think too much about compliance. Don't think too much like we'll expedite the process. Turnover 24 hours. You ask a compliance commit to review whether it is like SOC 2, type 2, like whatever, like things that compliance wants to check. But like removing that red tape, like it will be easy. That was like the first alignment. We will make it easy for you guys to jump on whatever tools you want to try. No limit whatsoever. There's no preferred actor just yet, or that we want to have. Try anything that makes sense. And the last piece was, and you know what? We'll take the hit on the budget. You want to try 3, 4, 5 of those tools, like on a monthly basis, and you need to buy a subscription and everything. You know what? It's fine. just do it. So we've created those budget allocation, making sure that people feel enabled to try things out. Sometimes you're like, that might be cool, but it's a bit expensive, and I'm already using whatever, like Copilot, or we're already using that. Maybe it's too much for the company. And that's why I was insisting on the fact that we have like old timers, and you get used to some of the practices that were in place. And sometimes it's just stick and you don't challenge them anymore. So like setting that alignment and saying like, no, this is a new world. The rules are changing, and be wild. And you're totally entitled to be wild. And it was interesting because of course, like the first quarter, it was like a bunch of ad hoc things and adoption. Not everything was controlled, but we created this sense of urgency and this sense of enablement. So pretty much everyone jumped on something. Some people using ChatGPT, some people using some, I would say, new IDE, being whatever. I'm not here to name things, but different ways. And once we created that environment, now it was the time to, okay, let's go back to a much more alignment. You had the autonomy. Let's align now.
I'd love to hear how that AI adoption has changed, like those workflows day to day. Because I almost feel like the AI landscape is changing day to day. The capabilities it's like the Wild West of things happening all the time. So how do you kind of build a new normal and let that change and enhance your engineering practices?
I mean, it's also like a new paradigm. So it's a new paradigm or like a new tools for ICs, but even us as leaders, like I would say we are managing people. The way we were optimizing and making people move faster in the past was by standardizing a bit, providing a golden path so that you can optimize your process and tools for like the passing case. And sure, some people can have some flexibilities and everything, but you knew that maybe you had like a favored like IDE, a favored like CI/CD, I would say a platform or whatever. And our way to optimize was to standardize a bit, work on the DevRel associated to it. Now, the problem is those tools, they change every freaking week. And you were like totally right with that. And you said something important, but like some are just like addition to your current flow. Maybe it's embedded in your IDE. Maybe like you're using VS Code, and that's great. This is within the same experience and same flow that you had. Some people might use like develop mostly through like the terminal and using tools like Z or Warp, I would say. Bring that into your flow. But more and more, we can see that the flow is changing. Like, for example, like OpenAI Codex is like a different type of flow. Like you're asking for some, I would say, weird request to this agentic framework, and it's coming back with a PR. Like you don't even have to look at GitHub. You just ask like, hey, fix this bug that I've seen about like memory management in my, I would say, that area. And it's coming with a PR. And all of a sudden you need to, and it's interesting. We have some developers doing that now. They basically ask a bunch of requests in the morning. They don't care about it. It's fully async. Then they focus on their core project. And at noon, they take a break. They go back to those like agentic frameworks that is coming back with some PRs. And now you are like in the reviewing PRs more than you are like actively working on things. And the workflow is different. The way to think about it is different. The way you organize your day is different. So right now it's like, it's way too soon, I believe, to understand how the new flows will become. So what we've done is just to capture some of the best practices. So we have an AI guild, kind of like following a bit like the Spotify models of guilds. We had guilds in the past and still have like for front end, back end, so that we have like some like consistency across the different parts. We created an AI guild with representatives of each platforms, because it's not that one tool will work with everyone. Like ask my iOS engineer, like I would say it's different. It's different. So we have best practices, we have like best models, we have like that are working per platform, and we're trying to identify that, compile, and provide the up-to-date. And the AI guild, I would say that's their job to some extent, is to work on those like identification of best practices, communication of those best practices, and also track adoption and understand what is I would say why some teams are not adopting, what is the specificities or like subtleties of their world or their workflows that makes things like different. Long story short, we are pretty intentional in driving the change.
Yeah, we have an AI guild here at Stack as well, and facing the same challenges and same benefits as well, people from multiple disciplines all like posting like, this sounds really exciting. And then they jump to other areas. This is really exciting. Even in a lovable way, we have some curmudgeons saying like, oh no, we should never do this. Or,
Yeah, exactly.
and that's a great balance of to
Yeah.
see. And everyone's having their own sort of rubric of like, this is a great place for us to use AI. This is probably not where we want to use
Not
AI.
yet.
Yeah, not yet. Well, hopefully it keeps evolving and growing, especially as kind of like we like formalize how that data comes in and how we can keep improving it, make it like that cyclical agreement of between content generation and then content delivery. That's a whole other podcast right there. But yeah, I love that AI Guild. We were lucky at Stack to also have the same empowerment from our leadership. We tried to empower them like, try something, do it, give it a shot, break, put it back together, just see how it behaves and change your paradigm, try to get out of that comfort zone and see where it can help. And in some places we saw, especially around like documentation, some test generation, those were some easy wins for us to really get some things going. And then we're trying to find other areas of the code of what can it rewrite for us reliably, and trying to find that balance of like, well, we really needed human context here that we weren't able to get the AI, but some other areas, like it actually gave us some new interesting ways to approach some problems. It's a very fascinating balance that is changing all the time, but trying to find that balance, it's a fun adventure of being in kind of this new frontier.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. Like the one thing that AI has really be helpful with is like those side projects that you never had the time to do, like that are not production or for your customers, but like kind of like those helpers or like those like data cruncher that you're like, if I could do like this script and everything, but like I don't have the time. And now you can basically do them like as a side project. So we had like a lot of like quick wins like this on all this mundane work, which is pretty crazy. And one thing
not
that
even
I
just
found,
for engineers. Like
totally.
it's opened a door to many other people just have like a quick run up app to something help them along.
Yeah.
Like that's opened so many doors and shortened that learning curve of those quick little side apps.
Yeah, no, totally. And one thing that we found like really useful in our case, like we're pretty like design oriented at Superhuman. So we spend a lot of time thinking about like the user flow, like the user interactions, because we want the product to feel right. The reality is like to feel right, you need to try the feature, because if you have a Figma and everything, like that's great, but you have like a lack of feelings when you use the product. And tools like V0, for example, allows our PM and designer to basically ship a working version of the user interaction. So now you're able to say like, no, it feels clunky. It looked great on paper, but like it feels clunky. So you don't have to implement it. Now you have those tools that are doing like a pretty good POC that looks great, and you can try it out. So that's another like area that was like pretty impactful for us, especially.
But I love that the POC part of where I think it really helps to explain some features. An example that came to mind was a feature we're hoping to announce kind of quickly at Stack, but it came from a place not within engineering. It was someone else. Like, I have this idea on how to do it, and they just had trouble explaining it. So they were able to spin up just a quick example. Like, let me just show you really quick. This isn't fully featured. This is not ready to go to, in front of our millions of users. But I can explain the idea much better visually by just giving 100%. You the interactions. It was so powerful. Just like, oh, I totally see what you mean now, and that was so much more persuasive.
No, 100%. I think this is like the interactions between designers, PMs, EMs, or like tech leads, whatever like your triad is. Like all those tools like accelerate all of that in a pretty aggressive way. But that's also like something that is interesting, because seeing all those progress. All of a sudden, your CEO, your board, like they're like, "Hey guys, now we can do like twice as fast." Like, and you have like the expectations that are growing as well. So we are kind of like always catching up between like you have like all those CEOs that are bragging about the fact that 95% of the code is generated with AI. Like I would put their quotes on this as well. But like you see a bunch of people bragging to some extent, or like maybe inflating a bit the numbers to show that they are AI natives. And this is creating like an environment where you have also some sort of peer pressure to compare like what you're doing and the value and like the improvement that you see in your team and the reality of like those that impact, and this sort of like qualitative feedback that you get from the different networks. I'd be curious to understand, Ben, like how you've been facing that.
At Stack, we're bringing in a whole lot of tools and how we use it. We still have a position I'm proud of and want to keep in that there's a human in the loop for anything that goes out. I think some places there are obviously things that we don't use that for, like number crunching, organizing, sorting data, things that we do internally that may not be as production facing. We don't have as much of a stress on, but we view AI tools as accelerating our engineers, not replacing some of the tasks that they do. So I think that's kind of where we put our line of whatever you were doing, especially like those tedious, redundant tasks of that you have to do like 20 times of sorting. AI fits wonderfully there, but we still have a human that is doing those PR checks, that is checking there, that is monitoring the build pipeline. But what AI has really helped us do is how can we get alerted to changes or anomalies really quickly when we're monitoring or during observability? How can we kind of consolidate pieces of code and rescan, identifying those opportunities and then kind of helping give us shortcuts on how to do it has really been helpful, especially on a couple teams where we had some longer timelines that got shortened just simply because of it kind of did some of this boring rote work that we would have to do to spin up new sites or new features. That's where it's really been leaning in for us and helping in delivery and stability a lot.
Yeah. One thing that was like I see as being like relatively impactful is the onboarding and the ability to basically ask questions. Like you're a new engineer in your new code area that you don't know exactly. You need to interact with like an API endpoint and you don't know exactly, you don't understand like lots of dependencies. That's not your language of choice. So you're coming and you want to ramp up, and the ability to ask and whether it is Cloud Code or like Copilot, like how this is working. Tell me more. Like I want to understand the difference. I would say connections between those libraries and everything. Like help me provide that. I would say early step. Like that was something that was mentioned by one of my engineer, like during one of those reviews. Like the cognitive load that you have when you jump into like a new piece of software because you're helping a team or whatever, it's usually like you spend a lot of time just trying to understand the lay of the land. And this is like dramatically improved with those tools because they guide you. It's as if you have someone that knows the code already that helps you. Like, look here, because this is where we do that, and this is where we do this, and we're using this framework to bring everything together. I'm like, okay, now I get it. And getting to that, how I get it from days to like 1 hour, using the right tool and asking the right question. So that was like pretty impressive.
To shift it a little bit to maybe some more traditional things in the context of AI, like how has measuring performance of an engineering team have to change based on like kind of the new things? Like how do you judge a high performing team, and has AI tools changed your thoughts on that at all?
I mean, there's always a part of like qualitative and quantitative. I wish someone will come up with like a one quantitative KPI that I can look at and that will tell
100%.
me, I would say, the reality. I'm still using, I would say, one specific KPI on aggregate that is interesting for the trend rather than from the raw number, which is like the number of PR per engineer per week. We have those DORA metrics and like space metrics and everything, but like I find this one to be like about the throughput. And it's only about the throughput. So it's not touching on the outcome, I would say the real stuff. And it's something that you can trick because number of PRs, okay, I will do like a bunch of like stacked PR and I can like inflate artificially that thing. But still, when you talk about it with people and you explain in your organization that that's something that is interesting, don't trick it. It's just here to understand if there are some teams that are facing more difficulties, like maybe it's just local, maybe it's because your stack is more complex, maybe you're doing like a big refactor, or maybe there's always some reason that you need to provide. But having this KPI to me was always good, like trying to understand the number of PR per engineer per week. And it's normalized. So like you grow, you have more people, you normalize by the number of people in your organization, and it gives you like an idea of the throughput. And qualitatively, when you look back and you have always this feeling that, oh, damn, this month, like they were like on fire, and you can always correlate those. So I found that one like to be pretty interesting. And with the rise of AI, we've seen that number getting like higher. So like the raw throughput is better. Doesn't mean that like the outcome for the end users is better. Like we need to measure that like in a different way. But like this raw number is getting better with AI, and we complement that with some qualitative analysis. We do like monthly survey asking our people like, is it better? Do you is AI helping you? Yes, no. Are you using it every day? Yes, no. And we can see definitely that there was some skepticism 9 months ago. And now people are like, no, 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 it's part of my job where I am. And right now, like the last survey that we did in April, on average, I think that people are now saying qualitatively, but in their own estimation, that they probably won like 20% of their time, increase of productivity being 20%.
Oh, wow.
Some people getting as far, and depending of when in the project, as 40%. And I was mentioning this case of you're new into the project with all those tools, your ramp up is getting like so much faster. So on aggregate right now, and we have like mostly senior people in our organization, understanding and acceptation is 20% is probably a bit higher than that, but at 20% is a conservative perspective on the productivity gain with AI.
You were speaking my language there on so many points of when we can find that one metric to judge it, like we can all retire. We don't need engineering leaders. And I agree that I think numbers are important, but they're indicators. They're like points, variables to help you make a decision on how a team is doing, like whether it's velocity or PR's pull. And what's that classic saying? You tell me how I measure you, I'll tell you how someone's behaving. And that's really how they can lean. But when I do try to reassure them, like you're like, this number is just for us to try to find patterns. Using velocity as an example, if there's a team that for some reason they're like the number of stories or whatever dropped, we look at like, is it the type of stories? Was someone just out sick? Let's just look at like, what can we glean from that? Or when they really shoots up, like, okay, are they just really good at this area? What did we do different that really enabled them to do things faster? So we try to use it to be like an indicator of like, hey, that's worth looking at closer.
Yeah, to me, it's a great conversation starter. You have this KPI trending up or down, and you bring it to the team and say, hey, folks, last week we are pretty down. What's the context? Help me understand. And not in a bad way, but just more let me understand. We had this big refactor because we moved from, I don't know, CoffeeScript to whatever. So it's taking a bunch of time and it's usually massive PR. So yes, I got one PR for me this week. End of the discussion. That's great. That's it. That's the context that I need. I would say this is a conversation starter to understand the lay of the land, and it differs per team. But at the same time, when you have a board, when you have a CEO, you need to give something to, I would say, help them understand how the team is evolving, how the team is facing the AI. Is it improving or not?
And I think they're trying to use that to maybe replace other shortcomings. As you said, it can accelerate engineers, but that doesn't solve all your problems. I think a mistake I see some leaders making of either they're not getting the right product market fit, they're not really hitting what the customers want, and think well, we'll throw AI at it and then we'll build things faster and go well, if you're still not going in the right direction, going in the wrong direction faster might even make your problem worse. So it doesn't really solve a lot of leadership or product fit gaps. And I think a lot of people are viewing AI that way of we'll just give our engineers AI and then a lot of our problems go away. And I think it's an extremely valuable tool. It's another tool in the tool belt, but you also have to give them the right direction, the right ideas, and the right enablement to still build the right product, the right fit.
Yes, and you need the right profiles to look at it. You need the right seniority, I would say, to use it proficiently. When you have millions of users or millions of I would say transaction per I would say maybe not per second, but you have a platform that is under a huge amount of load. You don't want a magic PR to be just barely approved by a junior engineer and going to production. No freaking way. No freaking way. Oh, we are not there yet. We are not there yet. And
no,
I don't know if we'll be there at some point, but still, it's still a great tool. It's still something that is changing the way we work. How do we manage that? With our, as an engineer, you're an engineer, you have 10 years of experience. You were not born with it. I was mentioning that I was born with my Amstrad CPC 6128, but between that and I would say when I graduated with my master, the change was somewhat linear, but it was not a step function change. What I got from those early tutorials and the way I was working, sure, more depth. I was the metal and the way the processor is working and everything, sure. But it was not a paradigm shift. I was always thinking this way. Now we're living a paradigm shift. How do you adapt to it? You need to understand for your own career, how to adapt to it. And that's tricky because I was discussing with someone else last week, and we were talking about like those engineers that are getting out of college. They were basically in a world where what they learned in the first year as freshmen was totally different in the second year because of the paradigm shift. And like in the course of their study, they've seen like AI being a cool. They discovered like ChatGPT that can answer, I would say, some questions pretty fast. They understand that, oh, damn, now we can build with LLMs. Oh, damn, now there's agents. Oh, damn, now there's MCP. Oh, damn. Like every time, like there's a paradigm shift. So they are growing with this brain plasticity as like the normal. While we were, I would say, building with the assumptions that you have time to learn because things won't, I would say, I mean, we moved from pure JavaScript to jQuery to Angular to React. I mean, it's not that much of a change if you think about it. And it took, I would say, it took like what, 20 years to get there?
Yeah, you might be right. Especially like the JavaScript to jQuery. How revolutionary was jQuery at the time of I can do all of this now without having to write all this JavaScript?
It's just another level of abstraction. So for my brain, at least, it was like, okay, it's cool, it's simpler, but it was not a paradigm shift. What do you think?
And I would say a little bit, the paradigm shift, I think, was how welcoming and how it enabled new people to get right into making interactions and things on a web page. I agree. The capabilities weren't different. It's not as if the DOM interaction changed with JavaScript or anything, but how many people could just say like, just dot animate on something now and move things around when before this were long JavaScript functions that you had to adapt to each browser because IE6 was still around and causing headaches like all around. So I think like in terms of what we can do on the web, no, it didn't change. How many people could do things faster within the web development? I do feel like there was a big shift there.
Yeah, my point was more about like, what does it change for you as an IC in terms of like skills management? Like jQuery is coming. You don't have to jump on it and learn the new paradigm just right away. Like right now, it's super easy to be left off. Like you cannot just wait 1 quarter to understand what's happening. Like you need to stay up to date. And I think this is probably like where like brain plasticity is important because we had more time. I mean, jQuery, like you can take a year to learn it. That's fine for your career. Like if you basically wait too much on those AI toolings and everything, getting a new job might be tricky because like we are all thinking, and I'm pretty sure it's the case for you at Stack as well. How do you bring AI fluency in the interview process? Because more and more you want people that are able to use those tools in a way that makes them proficient. So that will be part of the interview process.
Those are great questions. Tell me, what's next for Superhuman? What are you most excited about?
Oh, it starts with a problem, I feel, that we need to solve. So I was mentioning it, we overemphasize on quality. Our users, they feel great. Everything works. Everything is fast. Everything is correct. So there's a feeling that we're creating of delight and trust between, I would say, the user and the product. The way you can think about like Apple devices, it just works. It's just great. We might discuss like the new, I would say, design framework that they shared during like the WWDC. But long story short, this approach of it just feels right. With the rise of AI and LLM features, you're kind of like switching from a perceived quality that we own and we can QA for as much time we want so that what's getting out of us is great and qualitative, to a world where a part of the quality, of the perceived quality, depends on the usage of the user. If you prompt, I would say poorly, garbage in, garbage out, the quality that you will get from an answer highly depend on the quality of your question and your ability to ask the question. So when you're in Superhuman and you're like allows for users to search their email and asking questions about their email and the context that they have, if they ask like poorly the question, the result would be poor. So one thing that is really important for us is to work on this perceived quality and avoid having our users complain about our quality while it was garbage in. So how do you control the garbage in so that you don't have garbage out? So that's one thing that is like something that I'm especially passionate about. It's more about UX than it is about like the typical, I would say KPIs for AI and like precision and recall and all of that. It's mostly about like the user interaction and how do you guide them into asking the right question. And the other piece is there's a lot of mutation in this market. We're not only an email tool, we're a productivity tool. Our users, on average, they basically like win 3 hours a week. So like that's the amount of time that we save them. So we're a productivity tool more than we are a communication tool. And there's a lot of productivity things that are happening right now. You can see like a lot of different interactions. Everyone is trying to, with LLMs, it's easy to get like, oh, this is your actions. So everyone is kind of like working in this world of like productivity. We have a passion, I would say it's passionate. Like we solved email. What is the next thing that we can solve? So the future would be about that. The future would be about understanding this evolution of productivity, understanding the perceived quality issue that AI is doing. And we think that we're probably the best place to solve those issues the most elegantly possible.
Thank you for listening. If you have questions or suggestions for guests that you would like to speak with, if you have suggestions for the kind of topics you would like us to cover, you can always email us. My email address is EMAY for Iramay at stackoverflow.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn.
So I'm Ben Matthews, Senior Director of Engineering at Stack Overflow, where we're focusing on human-generated content. We're really excited about some releases that we're going to do around enabling knowledge solutions and community products. You can find me at Ben Matthews on LinkedIn or Ben Matthews at Blue Sky.
I mean, I will just like suggest people to try out Superhuman. For the people that are not using Superhuman, it's a nice product. It feels just great, and it's creating a sort of like positive dopamine effect every day when you hit inbox 0. You can reach me on LinkedIn. But yeah, thanks for having me, guys. That was nice.